If you hadn't begged for ice cream that day, your father wouldn't have died. That's what my mother used to say to me every time she was upset. I endured it for nearly 20 years. Because I knew losing my dad was a massive loss for her, and maybe blaming me was the only way she could carry that grief. But what I didn't expect was that she would steal from me the money I had saved for 5 years. She took it and left with her new lover. I didn't let it slide. I made her, my mother, face the consequences. I gave her a lesson and a fitting end to the damage she caused. Follow the story and tell me this: was I right or wrong? To make my blood pay the price? Hello, I'm Madison Walker, 29 years old, Director of Operations for a major retail chain in Arizona. 3 years ago, I was still living with my mother and grandmother in a house that belonged to my grandmother. She was 80 at the time, frail, rarely left her room. And my mother, Linda, if I had to describe her in 3 words, she is impulsive, irresponsible, and reckless. She didn't have a steady job, lived off other people's money, and spent most of her time scrolling through social media, fantasizing about finding a real man who deserves her. She went through boyfriends faster than I went through toothbrushes. But the memory that's burned into my mind forever. This is a sentence I've heard more times than I can count. If you hadn't begged for ice cream that day, your father wouldn't have died. That line haunted me for years, and still does. My father died in a car accident on his way to get ice cream for me when I was just 7. And ever since that day, I became her go-to excuse for every misfortune. But I never complained. I worked hard in silence. Saved every penny. I swallowed every wound to escape that house and rebuild my life on my terms. And then, on the day I was set to place a down payment on my first apartment, she wiped my account clean and vanished. 3 years ago, after a week-long business trip in Dallas, I came home on a Monday morning, only to find that I had lost everything. I remember that day vividly. It was around 8 a.m. when I walked through the front door. I set my suitcase down, opened my bedroom door, and immediately felt something was off. I rushed to the corner of the room, to the safe. A simple black mechanical one, solid enough to protect the $50,000 in cash I'd been saving. It was part of a deal to buy my first apartment, $50,000 in cash and the remaining $300,000 by wire transfer, just as the seller had requested. The safe was wide open. The deal had been pried. The lock twisted out of place. Inside empty. No money. No documents. Nothing. And in that moment, only one name exploded in my mind: my mother. I ran through the house looking for her, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might stop. I felt the air leave my lungs when I opened her bedroom door. Her closet empty. Her perfume shelf bare. Her suitcase gone. And the red high heels she only wore for what she called very special moments, nowhere in sight. On the vanity, there was a folded note, written in sparkly purple ink like a middle school birthday card. "You'll be fine, Madison." I took the money from the safe only because I had no choice. I need a new life, one where I can truly live. I hope one day you'll understand. Understand? Understand that my mother had just stolen $50,000 from me and run off with some guy she met on Instagram? I grabbed my phone and dialed her number. "The number you have dialed is not in service." I tried again. And again. Same thing. My mind was spinning. Desperate, trying to figure out any way to reach the woman who gave birth to me. And just disappeared with everything I had. Right after that, I opened my mother's Instagram. A story, posted just 27 minutes ago. A bright, outdoor selfie. She was sitting at a lakeside cafe in Taos, New Mexico. The late afternoon sun glinted off a fiery red cocktail on the table. She was smiling wide, entirely made up, soft curls in her hair. She looked at least 10 years younger than she was. Next to her, a bald man in sunglasses and a white dress shirt was grinning ear to ear. His hand rested on her waist. I zoomed in on the photo. The watch on his wrist, it was my father's. The only keepsake left after the accident that took his life when I was 7. I had kept it like a sacred relic. My mother once promised she'd never give it to anyone unless it's someone who truly deserves it, she said. And now it was on a man's wrist I'd never seen before. I couldn't understand why she would do this to me. Why she would leave, take everything, abandon me in the chaos, and leave my aging grandmother behind in the care facility. I rushed to the nursing home. My grandmother sat quietly by the window as if waiting for something. Her eyes lit up with warmth when she saw me. I didn't say a word. I didn't explain. I just knelt and wrapped my arms around her. She held me gently, then whispered, "My sweet girl, are you all right?" I forced a smile. I told her everything was okay. But inside, I was shattered by the one person I never thought would be the one to break me. My mother. That afternoon, I went to the police station to report the theft of my $50,000. I brought my mother's handwritten note as evidence. They took the report, listened carefully, took notes, and then they told me what I had already started to suspect. Because she had left the state and was now in Mexico, she was beyond the legal reach of local authorities. They couldn't act immediately. And more importantly, the only proof I had was a handwritten note. Legally, not enough to issue a warrant. The officer explained further, even if they managed to track her down. If she denied everything and claimed she never wrote the note, there wouldn't be enough to charge her. I didn't argue. I didn't feel disappointed, because I hadn't come expecting a search. I just needed to know that I did my part, that I followed the right path, that I stood up for myself, even if the law couldn't yet stand with me. I used to believe that no matter who my mother was, she was still the woman who gave birth to me. And that alone, at the very least, it would stop her from treating me like a stranger. But then, one day later, I received a message from her, "Don't try to contact me. I gave up my entire youth to raise you. That $50,000 from the safe is a tiny fraction of what you owe me. I have no regrets. It's time I lived for me. I deserve a new beginning." She called $50,000 a small fraction? She called raising her daughter a debt I owed her? I stared at the screen, my mind a storm of disbelief, heartbreak, and fury. And from deep inside me, that familiar pain began to rise again, the kind of pain that dredged up everything I thought I'd buried. I remembered all the times she used my past like a weapon. If you hadn't begged for ice cream that day, your father would still be alive. I remembered those nights, curled up in bed, swallowing the lump in my throat. Not crying out loud. Not fighting back. I wish I could disappear, or at least disappear from her gaze. But there was always one person who stopped me from breaking completely, my grandmother. Whenever I cried, she would wipe my tears with the sleeve of her old cardigan, pull me into her arms, and whisper with a trembling but gentle voice, "No one's to blame, my love. That was fate. Your father is with God now. From above, he's always praying for you. He loves you." Where my mother used memory to punish, my grandmother used it to heal. Thanks to her, I learned how to pack my wounds into silence, how to walk tall without letting bitterness weigh me down. But today, reading each cold, calculated word in that message my mother sent, I knew, this isn't something I can tuck away. This isn't a small cut I can cover with time. This is something I have to face. Because sometimes, pretending it doesn't hurt hurts even more. I used to think I was used to pain. I used to believe that if you lived long enough with the feeling of being unwanted, you'd eventually grow numb to it. But I was wrong. Some wounds never toughen up. They lie quietly under the skin, waiting for the next cut to make them bleed again. And my mother, Linda, was an expert at where to press. I remember my 10th birthday. I didn't expect much, no cake, no presents. It's just a birthday wish. A hug, a look that wasn't cold. But instead, when one of my classmates brought me a handwritten birthday card, my mother snatched it from my hands, looked at me like I was her enemy, and threw it straight into the trash. "You think you have the nerve to celebrate your birthday?" she hissed, each word dripping with contempt. 3 years ago on this day, your father died because of you." The room went still. My tears welled up instantly, clinging to my lashes. And then, my grandmother stepped in slowly, holding the teddy bear I'd always dreamed of having. It's the same one I've kept for over a decade since. Her eyes weren't harsh, but they were clear, unflinching. "Linda, leave the girl alone." Her voice cut through the poison in the air, like a blade through silence. My entire childhood felt like walking a tightrope. I was terrified of slipping off the edge of my mother's twisted expectations. Every time I achieved something, she found a way to warp it. I got selected for the national debate team? She tore up the application. "What, you think you're some genius? If you're so bright, earn some money and pay the bills." So, I got a part-time job at a corner store. I saved every dollar. I bought little things I loved. I bought medicine for her when she drank herself into collapsing in the bathroom. I gave up opportunities. I gave up dreams. But I held on to one thing: I planned to get out. To escape the venom that poured from the mouth of the woman who gave birth to me. I didn't need her to be proud of me. I just needed enough money never to have to see her again. But now, She took even that from me and left me with nothing. 2 days after my mother disappeared, I was still a wreck. I drifted through each day like a breathing corpse, no sleep, no food. I had no feeling except the emptiness curling tighter around every breath. 5 a.m. The phone rang. The hospital's name lit up the screen, the one where my grandmother had been staying. She'd been admitted a few days earlier for mild heart failure. I visited her every day, read to her, peeled her favorite fruit. She pushed her wheelchair through the garden while we watched the leaves fall. She had smiled at me just the night before and said, "Come early tomorrow, okay?" But this morning, the voice on the phone wasn't the usual nurse. A mess. "Walker? I'm very sorry. Margaret passed away early this morning." I froze in the kitchen, still holding the phone. A sharp ache stabbed through my chest. And just like that, I went still, as if something inside me had been sealed shut. I had already lost my mother emotionally, if not literally. And now, I'd lost the only person who had ever truly stayed, my grandmother. 3 days after my grandmother's funeral, I still couldn't reach my mother. Every text, every call, every email met with silence. While I was still trying to figure out how to contact her, a letter arrived from the law office of Ellis and Keene. My name was printed clearly on the envelope, along with one line, "Notice of will execution Margaret Walker." I arrived at the office on Monday morning. It was a small space, wood-paneled, quiet. Sitting across from me was Mr. Raymond Ellis, my grandmother's attorney. After confirming my identity, he opened the folder in front of him and got straight to the point. "Mrs. Margaret Walker has left her entire estate to you." I gripped the armrest of my chair, my heart tightening. I asked again, just to be sure I'd heard him right. "The house," he said, "a savings account with over $300,000, a stock portfolio valued at around $400,000, and a vacation property in Flagstaff. The total estimated value is roughly $1.5 million. And then he read one final line, in her own words, "The girl has lost too much already. Let this be the first time she receives something truly hers." I didn't cry. I just sat there, silent. Because for the first time in my life, what I received, it wasn't pain. After the meeting at the law office, I went home. I sat still for an hour in my grandmother's room, breathing in the faint scent left on the blanket she had used for years, the one I used to curl into whenever my mother's words cut too deep. No lights, no phone, no tears. Just one thought playing over and over in my mind. She left me with a choice. So I'm choosing not to be the victim anymore. The next day, I began my plan. I started with the finances. Even though my mother had stolen the cash from the safe, she'd left behind more of a trail than she realized. Unbeknownst to her, or maybe just forgotten, she had been using an old secondary credit card still under my name. A card I had meant to cancel years ago. The latest statement showed everything: hotel bookings in Taos, SUV rental, perfume purchases, luxury massages, even a high-end detox treatment at some bougie spa. Total, $3,000. I was on the verge of losing it. I called the credit card company, requested a complete freeze on the account, a detailed statement, and opened a fraud investigation. "Do you have proof you didn't make these charges?" they asked. I almost laughed. I had more proof than they could imagine. A text, sent by my mother the day after she vanished. A handwritten note, left on my kitchen counter, written in glittery purple ink like it could somehow soften the weight of betrayal. And now, a complete statement showing she'd used the credit card that still bore my name. I documented everything: screenshots of the text, photos of the note, bank records, transaction logs. That night, I opened Instagram. Another new post from her. Same setup, cocktail in hand, red dress, that same bald man smiling beside her. And that same smug smile on her face, like she hadn't just set fire to someone else's life. The caption read, "Freedom has no value without a little rebellion." On more than one occasion, my mother had used the excuse of helping grandma to sneak her way into my grandmother's bank accounts. But that won't be happening anymore. Not ever again. After freezing the credit cards, the next step was securing the inheritance. I worked closely with the attorneys at Ellis and Keene to formally transfer ownership of everything: the house, the savings account, the stock portfolio, and the vacation property in Flagstaff. Every previous access point was revoked. All passwords, emails, and linked phone numbers changed. The lawyer looked at me and asked, "Do you want to press charges?" I answered, "Not right now. I don't need my mother to fear the law. I need her to understand that I'm no longer the daughter who silently endured every cruel word she threw at me. The following day, I sent a message to my mother. Through email, through text, through Instagram. Subject: the $50,000 you took and what I'm about to do. Body: you have exactly 10 days to reach out and resolve this quietly. If not, everything I'm holding onto won't stay in my hands. It'll be on the desks of the state court and every national credit bureau. This isn't a threat. It's a clear notice from one adult to another. The choice is yours. I hit send. No shaking hands, no hesitation. For the first time in my life, I was the one setting the terms. I didn't have to wait long. For days after I sent the message, my mother replied. I wrote back, we can meet. But you come alone. I don't want to see that man. She agreed within 15 minutes. I didn't know when she left Mexico, but that afternoon, she showed up on time. Light makeup, neatly curled hair, no red lipstick. There are no designer heels in the Instagram photos. Today, she came dressed as a mother seeking redemption. Madison, she began softly, I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have taken the money. I shouldn't have left like that. I said nothing. No nod. No shake of the head. I didn't blow it on nonsense. I used the money to start over. I've ended things with that man. I want to come back, start fresh. I don't want anything from you. I want to be near you. Near Grandma's house. I looked at her. For a long time. Not because I was moved. Not because I was angry. But because I wanted to see how much further she could speak before the weight of her lies started to show. If you want to make things right, I said calmly, then you'll have to prove it with actions, not words. Where's the money? The $50,000 you stole from me? She froze. Lowered her head. He took it. That man, he tricked me. I believed everything he said. I was stupid. Then she looked up at me with what she probably thought was remorse. I won't ask for anything. I want to stay. With you. To take care of you. To take care of this house. I stayed silent. My brain was screaming that money I worked years to save, gone in a blink. But I couldn't afford to panic. Not now. I let the quiet stretch. Then I said only one thing. I'll think about it. No promises. No open arms. But I didn't slam the door shut either. I left it open, just a crack. Just wide enough for a snake to believe it could slither in again. And when the door closed behind her, I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel fear either. I just felt still. After that meeting, my mother started to stay. Not officially. No big announcement. She just lingered. Stayed over more often. Made tea. Folded towels. She reorganized a few shelves like she was trying to atone. To an outsider, it might look like she's trying to change. But I didn't see her actions. I looked at her intention. And my instincts were screaming one thing loud and clear. She didn't come back to make amends. She came back to play the long game for the inheritance my grandmother left behind. So I started watching. With help from Tasha, my friend and a fraud investigator, I reset every security system in the house. Wi-Fi, personal laptop, financial accounts. Everything now logged access history, timestamps, and IP addresses. Within 1 week, I had my first clue. 5 failed password attempts, all are targeting an old investment account under my name. Every single one happened after 11 p.m. when I was asleep, when she was still awake downstairs. The IP address matched a new, unrecognized device recently connected to our Wi-Fi. Not her phone, not the house computer. It could be a new phone. It could be someone helping her. I didn't care. What I did care about was she doing it behind my back, under my roof. The bank called me 2 days later, just as I'd asked them to. They had received a phone call from someone claiming to be Margaret Walker, my grandmother, requesting to reactivate a savings account that had already been closed. The call had been recorded. I asked for a copy. And within 5 seconds of pressing play, I didn't need any confirmation. It was my mother, imitating the voice of my grandmother, who had passed away less than a month ago, all to access her money. I compiled everything into a single file on my laptop. Inside it, a report of the unauthorized login attempts on my accounts, access logs from my laptop, the full audio recording of the impersonation call, timestamps of the unknown device connecting while I was away. Then I sent it all to my lawyer. After reviewing it, he said only one sentence. If you're ready to pursue this, I believe we have grounds for 3 charges: financial fraud, impersonating a deceased individual, and unlawful access to personal property. But I wasn't ready to sue. Not yet. What I wanted, it was for her to feel the weight of being exposed. So I told him to hold off. For now. 2 weeks later, I decided to lay the cards on the table. I invited my mother to lunch. Not a family meal, but a casual reconciliation meeting with my lawyer, Tasha, and a representative from the bank I'd been working with. The reason I gave her was simple. You should sit down once and understand how I've handled the estate, so there's no more misunderstanding. She agreed instantly. Too fast, too easy, too predictable. That afternoon, she arrived at the upscale restaurant wearing a cream-colored dress, light perfume, and a smile, just friendly enough to look sincere. Nothing about her said, "This is a woman who stole money, impersonated her dead mother, and tried to hack into her daughter's accounts." I let her greet everyone, take her seat, sip her tea. Then I opened the folder in front of me. Not the originals, just copies. Enough to make the point. "I want you to look through a few things before we talk about starting over." I turned each page slowly, deliberately, without looking up. Security system logs, 5 failed login attempts. Access timestamps on my laptop while I was out. A partial transcript of the recorded call impersonating my grandmother. She froze. Stopped sipping. Stopped speaking. I finally looked up. "I'm not doing this to humiliate you. I'm doing this because you're living in a house my grandmother left to me, and you're still trying to take what was never yours." My lawyer, seated beside me, gave a subtle nod. Tasha said nothing. She just placed a small USB drive on the table. "Raw data," she said calmly. "Complete access logs and tracking history. If we need to take this legal, filing won't take more than a week." My mother looked around. Her eyes began to dart. Her hand clutched the edge of the tablecloth. I didn't mean to." Her voice was so quiet I had to lean in to hear it. I didn't respond. "I don't need your apology. I don't need you to admit anything. Everything here has already done that for you." Silence fell. Heavy. Still. No one said a word for several seconds. Only one person finally understood that the game was over. And no one. I was on her side anymore. She sat there. No more act. No more performance. Just a woman cornered, out of options. Out of exits. I looked at her and slid the folder across the table. "You have 2 choices." She looked up, eyes red. No tears, it's just the tension of someone who knows exactly what's coming. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't rush. I spoke like I was reading terms from a contract. 1, you leave this house. Permanently. I won't press charges for the $50,000. No lawsuits. No demands. But you must sign a written agreement never to pursue or touch anything tied to the estate again. No criminal charges. The file will stay closed. It ends here. I paused. 2, I send everything to the state court, the county police, and the financial institutions you've tampered with. There will be subpoenas. There will be an official investigation. And I no longer carry any moral burden to stop that from happening. She gripped the arm of her chair, her face twitching under the pressure. Then, precisely as I expected, she snapped. "You think you can lecture me? You self-righteous little brat. I gave up my whole life raising you, Madison. If it weren't for your stupid ice cream that day, your father wouldn't be dead. I lost my husband, my youth, my life, and it all started with you." Her voice cracked sharp, slicing through the room like jagged glass. People nearby turned to look. I didn't care. I didn't shrink. I didn't flinch. I looked her straight in the eye for the first time in my life. "No, Mom. I didn't kill Dad." I pulled a smaller folder from my bag, set it gently on the table. "This is the report from the auto shop, dated June 5th, 2002, 1 week before the accident. Dad had the tires replaced, but not with the recommended ones, with cheap, low-grade alternatives. The person who signed off on that decision was you." Her face hardened as the truth hit. I gave her no room to strike back. I kept going, my voice cold, precise. "I found out when I was 18. I started questioning why a fatal crash happened on a dry, straight highway. No one asked. No one dug deeper. So I did. I leaned in. You swapped the tires for cheaper ones. To save money. To buy yourself dresses. To sip your wine. The tires didn't grip. Dad hit the brakes hard to avoid a truck. The car skidded. Rolled. He died." I stared into her. Not angry. Not sad. Just clear. Not because of the ice cream. Not because of me. Because of you. The weight in the air could have cracked glass. She didn't respond. Her lips parted as if she might object, but nothing came out. I sat up straight, back unbent, voice unwavering. And you knew. For 20 years, you knew. And you chose to live with that guilt by dumping it onto me. Every day. Every word. Every time you called me a burden. Then, I placed a thick envelope on the table. My tone softened, but only in volume, not in warmth. Inside is a bus ticket. 6 months of living expenses. An address to a reintegration shelter. You can start over. She looked at me. Didn't reach for the envelope. Didn't blink. Her throat moved as she swallowed hard, trying to keep something from spilling out. I looked at her one last time. I don't need your apology. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this because I refuse to let you control my life for one more day. And then I stood up. I didn't look back. 3 years passed. I never looked for her, and she never contacted me again. I didn't send a message. I didn't ask how she was. Not a single word. But fate always finds its way to play with me. One early winter afternoon, just 3 months ago, I stopped by a small town where the foundation I work with was holding a community workshop. After the session, I ducked into a roadside diner to grab a coffee. And then I saw her. Linda. She was behind the counter, wearing gloves, scrubbing dishes stacked as high as her shoulders. Her face was sunken, her back slightly hunched. Hair tucked under a worn mesh cap. Her voice, soft, strained, had lost all its sharpness. She didn't see me. I was about to walk away. But then she looked up. And our eyes met. Just for a moment. One short second. Long enough for both of us to know. We recognized each other. She stepped out from behind the counter. I didn't move. Didn't step forward. Didn't step back. Madison. Her voice was hoarse. Gentle. No longer in control. I nodded slightly. No smile. No scowl. Hi, Mom. She stared at me for a long time. You look stronger than before. I nodded again. I am. I'm myself now. Not just a patchwork of old wounds. She swallowed hard. I used to think, what if I stayed silent long enough, everything would fade on its own. I looked directly at her. I'm not here for an apology. And I'm not here to forgive. I think. If something once started with a look, then at the very least, it should end with one that's honest. She said nothing. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small box, simple, wrapped in black velvet. This box had been with me for 2 years. Everywhere I went, it came with me. I placed it gently on the counter. I found him. The man you left with. And I got this back. I opened the box. Dad's Rolex. Once worn by a stranger, now lying still, untouched. No longer a symbol of time, but a reminder of everything that was twisted. Keep it. Not because you deserve it, but so you'll remember. Something stopped with time. She didn't reach for it. Just stared. And I turned to leave. No goodbye. No waiting for closure. No need for one last word. When the door of the diner closed behind me, it felt like a chapter of my life had finally shut with it. No guilt. No regret. No more wondering, what if? Because I knew. There were no more what-ifs. I got home late that night. The house was quiet, filled with the soft scent of lavender from my grandmother's old oil diffuser. I set the now empty velvet box on the table, then sat down in the wooden chair by the window. Outside, the night hung still, streetlights are blurred behind frosted glass. No fireworks. No music. Just me, and a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I used to think I needed a clean ending. A final sentence. An explanation. A happily ever after. But I've come to understand, I don't need a perfect ending. I need an honest beginning. A place where I don't have to stay quiet to keep the peace. A life where I'm not expected to apologize for existing. A future where I no longer carry the weight of someone else's guilt on my shoulders. My story ends here. Some people say I was cruel. Others say I was selfish. That all of this, over $50,000, just a number, just money, it wasn't worth cutting ties with my mother. That I should have been more forgiving, more humble, because after all, she's still your mom. But if you had lived through what I did, grown up under the shadow of a guilt that wasn't yours to carry, shouldered the weight of blame, someone else chose to place on you, then maybe you'd understand. Forgiveness isn't always the right thing. And sometimes silence is crueler than truth. So tell me, was I too harsh? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story made you stop and reflect, hit subscribe. Because this isn't the only story I have to tell. And sometimes it's the bitter truth that lets us finally see ourselves. Thank you for listening.